Greetings, Luke Westaway, returning champion.
Shucks. That's nice of you, Johnny. Thank you.
Seasoned games master.
So richly seasoned.
11 herbs and spices, I heard.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those are just different salts.
What?
It's like celery salt, garlic salt, chicken
Presumably, you didn't tell me this on a previous video because it would have upset me too much for me to go on and successfully GM.
Yes, that is exactly right. But
is this something that they tell people when they successfully GM a game of Dungeons and Dragons? Is this when you get to know the secret herbs and spices?
Yes.
It turns out it's all just different salts.
Yeah, the Colonel used to ring you himself, but obviously he is deceased, so...
You'd get a call from the Colonel and Gary Gygax.
Well, howdy there. It's me, the Colonel. This is my good friend, Gary Gygax.
Welcome to the inner circle.
Anyway, if anyone watching is confused, fair enough. But in case you've just sort of stumbled across this video, basically, Luke and I have been on something of a journey where he picked my brains about how to GM in general, but also how to run Dungeons and Dragons. Then planned an adventure for the Oxventurers Guild, and then he only went and bloody ran it last week. So this is kind of sort of a debrief. Yeah. Sort of just like picking over it and seeing how you felt and sort of where things went right and where things went very right, and you know, that sort of
well
vibe.
I mean, let me kick right off by just saying an extremely warm and grateful thank you to you, Johnny, because this I can see your brow furrowing as you try and resist the compliment, but here it comes. Brace yourself. I absolutely would not have had the confidence to attempt this if it wasn't for your sort of confidence boosting enthusiasm, and I absolutely would not have had the ability to do it if not for your extremely wise advice about just how to lay a session out. So there we go. Thank
you, that is very kind, although I feel like you could have smashed this either way, because gosh, you were a bloody natural up there. I really had a good time playing in that session and playing alongside the Oxventurers, who it turns out when you're actually with them as a character are scary. It's like, I was genuinely, because obviously I was like, my character doesn't really know these people, so I was asking them things and trying to play it down the line, like not necessarily being on their side and needing to be won over, and I was like, wow, they do terrible things sometimes.
I think it's because it's happened by degrees. So, and you know, like if you're playing and also if you've been watching, you kind of stuck with them, so they're kind of by default the goodies.
Yeah.
But like, it was really cool actually to see a new character sort of coming to meet them at the table. I really enjoyed the bit where you sort of took Merylwen aside and just was like, can you just, what the hell's going on? I enjoyed that for several reasons actually. Firstly, I thought it was a great bit of role playing and it was really funny and I enjoyed the conversation. Second, you started having that conversation and I just thought, they're going to talk about this for a bit and it's not going to involve any checks or anything. I've got about 30 or 40 seconds where I can like completely tune out of this conversation and start queuing up the next bit.
Yeah.
So I don't even really remember it, but I remember thinking like, oh good, this isn't for me. I can start sort of trying to like lay some track.
So funnily enough, that is like at the heart of one of the most common things for me when I'm GMing, and particularly for the Oxventure, and especially if we're doing it live, is that afterwards I don't really remember the sessions because things are happening from moment to moment and I'm aware of them, but I'm also like, my brain is wearing and I'm trying to think of things. But
it's almost like your brain runs out of RAM.
Yeah.
So like you're just, it's like it's still working, but there's no room to like to remember anything, to like store anything. It's kind of, you're really living, your brain is sort of going real hand to mouth.
Yeah, you're having to live in the moment, but you're having to live in two different moments at the same time, I think.
Yes.
But all in all, though, how was your sort of first experience running a game of D&D, and especially doing it live on the internet with a big audience?
Well, I absolutely loved it. I had a brilliant time. I thought it was one of the most mentally taxing things I have done in a very long time. Obviously I was nervous, and obviously doing it live on the internet that has like does sort of affect that. But I absolutely loved it, as evidenced by the fact that like I am now like already sort of GMing some games for some friends, and you know like have been asked to sort of GM for like another group, so which I sort of tried to encourage and said yes to. So yeah, so like I'm in my personal life, it's already something that I kind of
You're already away.
taken up. Already away, yeah. It's I really enjoyed it. I think I love playing. I love playing D&D, but I think on balance, maybe it was just because the first one it was like such a fun novelty, but I think I get just a little bit more pleasure from being the thing that means everyone else has fun, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like just feeling at the end like everyone had a good time. Also, like for all of the stresses of like trying to make sure that everything is making sense and moving like on the right path and that nothing feels inconsistent, I definitely feel like when you're playing D&D, most of the time you're just cruising through and it's just a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But then in those crunch moments where you have to think of something to do and it has to be good and it has to be clever, and ideally, if it's Oxventure and it's streamed online, it has to be funny and as well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't encounter anything while DMing that had like such a feeling of like, there was no sort of grip of panic while I was DMing that was as great as some moments I felt when I'm just being Dob and it comes around to my turn in combat and I'm like, I don't have an idea. I don't know what to do. Which actually, having been on the other side of the board, what do you call that?
Screen?
Divider? The
GM
screen? Having
yeah.
been on the other side of the screen, it seems ridiculous that I ever sort of worried while playing D&D, because it is collaborative, and whatever I would have said, it all kind of, with the will of everyone in the room, it all sort of can stay on track.
Yeah.
But you're so in it, you're so in the moment. Like when I'm role playing as Dob, I do get really absorbed in it, and so I think I'm rambling here, so like stop me if you'd like this to be more structured or anything.
Mm-mm.
The most there were some really rewarding moments while DMing, and I think one of them was when I hadn't really set anything up or introduced something, but I could see people starting to plan. That was the point where we were outside the antique shop,
Mm-hmm.
and I described the window and just the inside layout, and that there was some kind of thudding around upstairs, but hadn't really sort of given too many pointers.
Yeah.
And I think it was Andy just really sort of like took the lead on making a plan to get in there. And that was really rewarding, because I was my fear after that was like, they're just going to wander off down the street or something, or I haven't like set this up, or I haven't, the sort of subtle clues are too subtle. But so it was really rewarding to see them plan. And then the other bit was I can't remember exactly where it was. There was a combat round quite near the end, and or possibly it was the animated armor. As again, my memory is like slightly hazy around the whole thing, but I do remember the important information was that it was Jane making a roll or a check or something, and I could just tell that she was nervous about it succeeding, and I started to talk about what was like what was happening and the sort of consequences, and she went like, oh no. Or something like that, and I could just tell that it was real.
Yeah.
And obviously, from my point of view, I was thinking like, I'm just slightly hamming it up. There's nothing. Everything's going to be fine. At least in that moment, I knew. But I could tell that it was working. I suppose that was concrete proof that it was working for Jane. Like the role playing and the storytelling was working. She was, on some level, caught up in it.
Yeah.
And obviously she goes into that willingly and is a great player and a great role player. But I really I found that a rewarding moment.
Yeah, I mean, because sure, she turns up to the table and is a very willing player, and she's working collaboratively, but still, like it takes that effort from you to really sell it over the line.
Yes.
Because have her be like, oh, there are consequences, okay, like, and not be worried about it. That's actually quite a feasible thing to have happened if she didn't feel like the peril or the consequences were especially important. But you made her care about that role, and like there was an element of suspense, and I think that's like lovely. This is like that's what I really like about GMing. And actually, talking about you saying that you have moments where you panic as Dop, I find, maybe it's because I don't play as often now, but I find that I do worry more these days when I'm playing than when I'm GMing, because I'm aware that the amount of time you have to say something impactful or do something is actually relatively small compared to like the GM, because the GM is always kind of nudging people along. So even if they don't say anything for 20 minutes, the players are kind of following, they're going down a path that like the GM has got them started on. Whereas as a player, I'm like, okay, so you know, there are this many people around the table. I don't want to take up loads of time, but I want to be true to my character. I want to advance this thing, and I also want to do something useful and or memorable or funny.
Yeah.
And that feels like such a small window. Which is why, you know, it's why I love the Oxventures. I think they're really good at taking that moment and just knocking it out of the park. Like, there's very little sort of dead weight, but I get very anxious about that. So I actually find it easier to sort of just be in the GM seat and just be sort of giving like little taps and nudges to kind of get people moving in vaguely the right direction. That's sort of where my comfort level lies, I think.
Yes.
It's funny.
I think I know. It's like you have to always be focused, have to always be paying attention, but like the sort of anxiety and stress I found while GMing didn't particularly spike massively. I think in the few weeks that you've been sort of talking to me about this, and obviously that I was like preparing and planning and prepping stuff in my head, I started to kind of feel like there were three. Here we go. I'm giving you the 3 core pillars speech now here, which is that's a slightly inside baseball thing. So, sorry, that's an in-joke. When you go to see a video game presented, you are normally told about the 3 core pillars of gameplay, and it's like exploration, upgradability, and stuff like that. The 3 core pillars. So as a result, my whole brain is structured around 3 core pillars. But I felt like there were. I felt like I felt like there were 3 things happening. One was that like a third of it was rules, just like I was cramming like on D&D Beyond just for like the last few weeks, just like whenever I was just sort of in my mind, I would idly think, okay, this is happening and this is happening. Just make something up completely. What if a mage walked into a room and wanted to shoot firebolts at 2 velociraptors? Like, what would actually happen rules-wise and stuff? And then, like, when I found something that I wasn't sure about, I'd like look it up and cram it and stuff. And I started to look loads of stuff up while I was playing, and there's absolutely a ton of stuff I didn't know. But just the fundamentals of how combat works and stuff. So, like, that was part of it. That was just cramming, and that I could more or less do by myself. And you know, but anyone could absolutely do that. Anyone could do any of this, but that was, you know, that's just revision. The second part was the thing that when you are very kind to me and very complimentarily say you're a natural at this, I think the second bit is just kind of being able to like improvise stuff in the moment, and obviously you can't plan for that, but it's just a sort of being comfortable with your own ability to sort of spin some nonsense out of nothing. And when you've said nice things like you're a natural and you've got this and stuff, I feel like that's because it's so much of my day job that's not anything to do with tabletop is basically doing that. Like, you record a Let's Play, or when we make Show of the Weekend, or basically any video, like a huge amount of my professional life is, you know,
just just being relatively comfortable with the fact that if no one says anything to me, I will, you know, exactly, to yes and to just be able to spin nonsense and for it to sound okay. But then the third part, which was all you, was just structuring a campaign, and I would not have had any idea where to start. Like structuring a campaign, how much to plan and what to not plan. That is stuff that I think is not intuitive, that you do need someone who's done it before to give you some advice on. Like I was reading some one of the books, one of the D&D books, and I was just reading an example campaign, because you know you can play the campaigns from the books. And I was reading through it, and it was like, oh, if the players do want to know what's in the room, then tell them this, and if they do want to know. But it was like, it was so
there was just so much information. I was like, if I was following this, I would feel really, really spun out as soon as it deviates from that. And, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure you can have a really great time following one of the campaigns in the books. I'm sure it goes great and it's really fun. And obviously those stories have been written by, the expert professional storytellers. Who write the books. But like, just that there was something about you telling me, like, have a detailed first paragraph and know where you want to end up, and then everything in the middle is just kind of vague bullet points. Like, just I think for as long as I am GMing, I would be doing that, like, forever. Like, detailed first paragraph, know roughly where you want to end up, and then everything in between is just like giant frogs ? Or like something like that, and just trust that
the session will provide. I mean, you know what, I've looked at similar sort of plotted campaigns in the books as well, and I know what you mean. It's like, they actually make me quite nervous, because I'm like, well, how am I going to get this information across organically? Because it feels like it is all relevant information that is pertinent to tell people. But I think you're right in that the more of a road there is, the more you focus on how on it you are.
Yes,
so, I mean,
for sure.
Like, obviously I feel more comfortable with that kind of loose structure in the middle, because it's the structure I followed for years. But I think it has its uses. And obviously I was part player, part passenger in this session, because I knew what was coming, so I wasn't trying to. I didn't want to be at the forefront of the action, basically. Hence, helpful Sean being Dwarf Protocol. But
and what a great job of compartmentalizing you were doing, Johnny. I was so impressed and so great. Sometimes I thought, like, is Johnny nudging us on course, or is he just role playing? I really can't tell.
There was one point where I tried to nudge things along.
Which was that?
It was when it was smashing the safe open.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think more than anything, it was a time consideration. I was like, I feel like we've spent a lot of time here, and we committed to the fight with the armor where we could have snuck around it or whatever. And I guess I kind of the little GM that I carry around in my head was sort of telling me that if we let it go, we would be debating whether or not to open the safe and what to do with the contents for ages. And I was like,
and you want someone to be a baby.
Let's get the watch out. I wanted someone to be a baby, simply. But apart from that, I was mostly trying to focus on reacting to the others and what they were doing, and trying to be useful in a way that made sense. But it seemed like it all went pretty much according to plan. Like,
it did, yeah. There were points where I tell you what, why don't we we could broadly go chronologically through it, and
let's
then
do that.
we might and then maybe the very beginning. This was probably the hardest point for me. I felt like I completely underestimated. Like, firstly, but let me get this out of the way. The big failing for me in terms of, I think it went brilliantly. I was absolutely delighted. But like, the stream was supposed to run to about 2 hours, and we went for almost exactly 3. So it's not really a GM thing. It's more of a kind of video presenter, like YouTuber kind of thing. But like, I got to be able to run it a bit closer to time. So like, that was, and a huge part of that was I completely underestimated how long we would be in that tavern for, because everyone wants to settle into the role playing a little bit, which I now appreciate. People want to ask questions of the first NPC they meet, so there was loads of chat with the woman who worked at the bar about like pie and stuff like that. There was, people wanted to talk about what had happened, which is, and some of that was great. Like, I really liked Prudence using message to try and talk to Dob, even though he was 5 miles away, or even though he was really far away. I was thrown by Corazon, by Corazon saying, like, I pull out the hammer, which if I had my time again, and it probably, if I with a bit more experience, I would have just been like, you don't have the hammer, or something like that, because I didn't want him to have the hammer. I didn't want to get into a situation where the skeletons were there, but instead I rolled for it, and was in. I can't even remember what the result was, but I knew that I was planning to fudge it, whatever it was. I felt compelled to make it seem fair to Andy. But actually, I shouldn't have bothered. Probably, I could have just said like.
I think it would have been probably, but
it probably would have been more elegant to just be like, and then move on.
Yeah.
There was which reminds me actually, there was another point when I imagined the panic room that comes down around Shoelacy. I completely already had in mind that there was like thick glass in front of the thing, like in front of the ice, because my first thought when I was imagining this was like, obviously someone's going to try and like shoot through that.
Yeah.
But I forgot to say it. So then I felt a little bit like I was retconning on the fly, or like trying to protect my perfect plan when Corazon was like, I shoot a crossbow bolt through it. And I was like, oh no, sorry, I forgot to say there's thick glass. So mental note, remember the key points of that. Okay, so in the tavern, there was, we had Hengist introduced with a kind of like, there's a knock at the door.
Yeah.
Which was pointed out during the session that like people don't knock on the doors of taverns or something.
Well, that's why I actually had the chat window up, and I remember people being like, why would anyone knock on the door of a tavern? And I was like, I'll show you for why. And it's because Hengist didn't understand how taverns work, and I think that's fine. Like, you know,
that was cool. That was cool.
That was. I mean, the thing about the start of the sessions is it always takes a little time, and I have lost track of the number of times. There's been some lovely role playing going on, and I've been like, okay, but I do need to get the hook in now. And there have even been times when I've been like, so a thing happens, and everyone's like, whoa. So milk. Yeah, so that is not a problem unique to you or your sessions, I dare say.
I think if I did it again, probably I would have it start not in a tavern, but in a tea shop in the museum or something, just so that there was one fewer location to move from. Because I did feel like the first hour was quite a lot of, you're here, now go here. And when you got to the museum, all you're really told is like, go somewhere else. So it was like, it was a few locations in before like there was an action beat, which was the, breaking into the...
Yeah, into the thing. I suppose. I mean, I like, from a player's perspective, it was nice to sort of just go from place to place and get the mystery going sort of slowly. And I think, actually, this is quite a good area to make the distinction between running a game and running a game to time for a live audience, because the role-playing stuff at the beginning and talking to a tavern owner a tavern worker who sends you over to the museum, nothing wrong with that if you've got all the time in the world. It's I think the reason you're sort of thinking it over and sort of dwelling on it, and the reason I agree that probably cutting out the tavern and going straight to the museum, or having the quest giver be in the tavern and just give them the information straight. The only reason that is because we're doing it for an audience, within a certain time frame. But it didn't feel ploddy or jarring from like my side of the table at all. Okay, if it means anything.
That's good.
Yeah.
So then what happened? We were in the tavern, and then there was and then the hook did go in eventually, and we went to the museum. I really enjoyed all the gift shop stuff. That was completely all of that. All of that was obviously sort of freewheeling, but I didn't feel outfaced by that because I know what a gift shop looks like, and I know the tropes of a gift shop. So it felt, and everyone does. So I felt like we were all playing in with like familiar stuff. I think there was one thing that there was one point where my brain was just drawing a blank. I think it was when you were going to like try and pull apart one of the things. I thought, well, we'll do this. And what I had thought was, if he breaks it, security will be called. But I hadn't linked security being called to they end up like back on track for the quest. Thinking about it now, it's quite straightforward, because I guess security could be called. You could be in like a sort of museum jail, and then Shoelacy could come in and offer to get you off the hook if you do him a favor or something. But we're talking now with the benefit of not actually being playing literally now. And at the time, I was like, I don't really know what that'll be, but. So I did. I definitely preferred the bits where I made people roll for things and knew what would happen either way. Like I have an idea of the failure, I have an idea of the success. but I only had an idea of the failure, and it was very lucky actually. I can't remember what you rolled, but it was pretty a 1, yeah. So and that's always a gift. You know, that's a 1 and a 20 is always a treat. So
yeah.
So and actually, you know, that was easy for me because it was like, okay, Hengist embarrasses himself, but nothing fundamental is going to nothing fundamentally is going to sort of change the course here. But I did like that ended up dragging in the gift shop guy, Gus, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, then what happened? Then the braces. That was I think that was Jane.
Oh yeah, she was looking for the most magical stuff around.
Tell me about the most magical artifact. Yeah. Sorry, by the way, for introducing some magical braces.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm going to have fun with those.
Okay.
It feels like, from what I've seen on Twitter and stuff, it feels like the community is quite worried about how I'm going to deal with it. I don't know yet, but we'll work it out. It will be fun.
They worry too much.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that sort of toying with the idea that they're going to be like a really annoying fantasy proto Fitbit, and that the benefits of wearing them won't be good enough when they painfully take his blood pressure every 12 minutes.
Oh, that's brilliant. And just like it vibrates and it's like, you should walk around.
Yeah.
Yeah. or like tells him off every time he drinks alcohol, or like does anything vaguely unhealthy, or maybe stops him. Maybe like stop, like
Oh
like,
my
actually,
god! Yeah. Where's my pen? See, it's it's fine. It's easy.
Yeah,
anyone can do it.
That's cool.
Bit.
Yeah, that was probably the moment of the most wild sort of on the fly, literally no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me about these braces.
Yeah,
but
I think you did a great job, because obviously I knew exactly what was in the doc and what wasn't. So anytime you were improvising something, like for example, when Andy was like, the gift shop. You know, obviously that was him testing the perimeter defenses for weaknesses, but I thought you smashed it. And I think, again, solely because we had planned, you'd planned the session and we discussed it, when you were like, you can tell he's reading from the placard, and what he's saying is, like, you did a perfect bit of stalling for time and making him seem uncertain, so that while you were reeling off stuff that was coming straight from brain to mouth, it was perfectly pitched. It was like, if this sounds at all clunky or unusual, it's because
Gus doesn't know, and that was definitely a win. Thinking of making him be also not knowing really. But that was I was pleased with that. I then spent, like, as soon as we got back to the museum and I think Andy mentioned the braces, I was like, please no one ask me what they're called, because I couldn't remember, and I didn't. So that was something actually, that was a learning actually, because I'd created these artifacts, I've named them Thogroth or something like that. The braces of
I think so.
I should Google that and check it's not already like some intellectual property or something. Cut this if it is. No, I don't think, unless I've spelt. I mean, but obviously I can't actually remember what I even said. So.
Yeah, well, it's all right. It's my problem now.
I think we're fine. It's similar to I think we're fine. Sorry, back on track. So that I should have written it down. I should have just typed it in my doc, braces of whatever they were called.
I fall into that same pitfall, and it's something I'm trying to get myself to do more. Is just type, if I've named something, write it down. Yeah.
Because I wasn't expecting it to come back, but obviously as soon as it did come back, I was like, they are going to get these braces. It's going to be really important in the fight. So yeah, there was that. Again, the braces, then shoelacy stuff. I feel like that all went fine. No real surprises there.
I think, you were talking about wanting to make him sort of affable, and I think you did a really good job. Like, he was that kind of interesting, slightly eccentric figure. But there was also an element of mystery that left everyone being like, why does he want this so badly? You know, which Corazon then sort of took and ran with, to the point where he was quite suspect.
Yes.
I think it was kind of the any means necessary line.
Oh, I see. By like, he's willing to turn a blind eye to sort of potential violence or something. Yeah. That was maybe I'd have played it like, please don't promise me you won't hurt anyone or something like that, because
Yeah.
obviously they wouldn't have obeyed that.
Because the difficult thing is, like, when it was being thrown your way, it was a fun bit of in-character stuff from Prudence, being like, what's that you say? We can disembowel anyone we want, you say.
Yeah.
And that's funny, and it's a lovely thing to have in. But the second you go like, all right, they're like, wow, that's immoral. Even though they're talking about the violence coming from them as a group, the minute it's sanctioned rather than naughty,
yes, you're right.
That character is called into question. As it was, I actually thought it was a lovely touch. Like, I thought it worked out really nicely, and it added that element of intrigue that really sort of kept the mystery going, whereby everyone was like, well, are we going to get away with this or not? Are they going to be nice or...
We're skipping ahead a bit now, but it's probably worth talking about at this juncture. Like, the point where I was... the point that I found most difficult, definitely, in the whole campaign, was when everyone got back to the museum, and... like all of the business with like sort of getting all the pieces in place for Shoelacy's heel turn. And I could not in the moment think of a way to let the party have what it wanted, which was to give him a fake watch, but to also end the game in a situation where they still where the watch hasn't been destroyed and he has the watch so that he can reverse the baby thing, because I did want the baby thing to be reversed at the end. And again, in retrospect, that's not too complicated a thing to do, but just in the moment, that's what my brain was seizing up on. My brain wouldn't let me tinker with the I needed these things in the moment. I needed these things to happen. I needed Shoelacy to have the real watch, and I needed no one else to be like in his immediate vicinity. So on the one hand, it was a real gift, because I in the moment I thought, oh, let's have him put on like a big mask and gloves and stuff, and maybe everyone will get the cue to stand back, which they did, thank goodness. Also, obviously, the whole thing about dissolving of the fake watch was like made up the first time they go to the museum, but actually that kind of came back into play the second time. That like, now we've got this sort of magic purple, now we've got this Vimto stuff that like dissolves fakes. What I would have, again, you can't really correct things after the fact, but the second the session ended, I thought, hang on, why didn't I just have Shoelacy take the fake, go, ah ha ha ha, at last it is mine, then do the panic room thing, then do the fight, and then afterwards, whether he's alive or dead, then it's like you've kicked the problem down the road. Somehow I will have Prudence turn back to normal at the end. I'm sure I can figure that out later. But in the moment, I was really fixed on the idea of Shoelacy having the real watch and then doing the heel turn. So that's why I felt like there was a little bit of like, and unfortunately it kind of sort of ended up being on Corazon's shoulders, which wasn't fair, because Andy's obviously role playing it and he's suspicious of this suspicious character. But everyone watching knows that like, oh, the mummy fight comes next, so like let's get to the mummy fight would be good to do now. And I was the one who was like stalling that and holding that up. It's weird, I did go back and like watch that bit, and in my mind that was about 20 minutes of back and forth, but it was way quicker than that.
Isn't it always?
Just like you were saying. So possibly that was like not a big deal at all, but that was the point at which I felt like I wasn't being imaginative enough.
See, this is the thing. I know what you mean in terms of like, it would have been more elegant to just do this and blah blah blah, but I don't think it's fully accurate to say that you weren't being imaginative enough, because what you were doing was also playing along with the wishes of the party. So the way I remember it as a player is like, there was this nice moment where we'd given him a fake watch, like it hadn't gone to plan, and there was this conflict between like Merylwen especially, and also Hengist and Corazon as to whether or not to just hand it over. And eventually you were like, I'm sensing you've not been completely honest with me. Like, I don't remember this as like a woolly moment of like struggling to get the action going. I remember
That's
it as
good.
us disagreeing.
I remember it as like, thank God for Ellen, because when she was like, I just reach into Corazon's pocket, even though I think someone pointed out afterwards that Corazon didn't even have the watch
No, I
at
had
that
it.
point. But yeah, but it was like that's it, that's fine, that's enough.
That's your moment.
That's gonna be suspicious. He's gonna spot it. But it was I did do. This is going to be a little bit complicated to explain, but potentially. But I did have to do some sort of mental gymnastics in my head, because when they came with the fake watch, Corazon was like, "I wanted to do a fake watch," and I sort of did a little difficulty check with myself in there and thought, Shoelace never going to fall for a fake magic watch.
Yeah.
He loves magic watches. He's a museum curator of magic watches.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be fooled by a gift shop thing, no matter how like prettied up it is. He will know a magic object. So when he was handed the fake, in my head, he knew he'd been tricked there and then.
Right.
But wasn't revealing it.
Okay.
But that wasn't working because like nothing was moving. So then when Meryl picked the pocket, then I was like, okay, scrap that headcanon. The new headcanon is he was fooled by the watch, but now he thinks something's
Now
up.
he knows, yeah.
So there was like his kind of whole his character, his behind the scenes character was a bit in flux during that sort of moment. That slightly tight. It was like a chicane sort of. We squeezed through it. We got through that bit, but it was that's how it felt.
I know what you mean, and you know what? I kind of wish that this is something I had thought about before the session, because these moments are the toughest always, and they do just happen, and they do keep happening. And part of it is that, like, it's kind of like you're standing there and you're waiting for them to finish the jigsaw puzzle, because then once they've done the jigsaw puzzle, we can go get ice cream. But the problem is that like they've got the 3 pieces and they're just still like and you kind of want to reach in and go like, oh, for goodness sake, bam, bam, bam. Yeah. But it's keeping your nerve while they finish the puzzle for themselves is often so difficult, because it feels like, in the moment, it feels like A, it's taking ages, and B, that it's a problem, and C, that it's because you've not done something properly. But more often than not, it is just people not knowing how best to proceed at that given second.
Yeah. Which, to look at it really positively, if everyone is kind of arguing over what to do or something, then that means that they care about, like, you know, that they think there is a really right and a wrong thing to do. Yeah. Whereas actually, you know, there wasn't particularly, like, whatever happens, a mummy's going to pop out and at the end, I mean, Prudence won't be a baby anymore.
I'll miss baby Prudence though. But like, in the moment, thinking as Hengist, because I tried to go into his head as much as possible toward the end. Like he was just greedy for that money, basically, and so it was like Corazon was like, but didn't he seem shifty? And what if he's doing bad things? It's like, but I really want this money, and if we don't give it to him, there will be no money, and all of that would have been for nothing. So it was very easy for me to just be like, come on, give it, you know. Yeah.
Well, Ellen mentioned something interesting afterwards, which was that she had a slightly meta consideration going on there, which was that she looked at the time and thought, oh, this is probably the end. I think this is the end of the adventure.
I remember.
So from Ellen as Merylwen, you know, she's role playing, but she's also thinking like, I don't think there's a trick here. I think we're going to get some money, or Prudence is going to be turned back. I don't think there's going to be a... So you know, she was looking at the clock and thinking, I'm sure Luke will have run this exactly to time like a professional, and this will all be tied up. So that was an interesting moment.
Yeah.
So hang on. So skipping back, where did we get up to? Oh yeah, you leave that. We go to my favourite bit. The bit where I just felt like we were just all sort of flying together. The whole section from arriving at the antique shop to leaving the antique shop. I loved every moment of that. I was so
gorgeous.
into it. I threw in the cat last minute.
I was so happy with that. Like, yeah, because it's lovely when you discover that there was something in the shop you didn't know about. Yeah, and I thought cool for, you know, it's basically when you do an animal, it's just like it's there for Ellen to use if she wants. Yeah, basically, like that's the role of animals in the Oxventure. So that was cool. I liked that Symes was
a pretty straightforward character, and everyone seemed to kind of be on board with that. I really enjoyed. I hadn't imagined that Prudence would, but it totally worked. Like using whatever it was called, the Palantir, projection to sort of
clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance, yeah, that's the one to sort of see into the upper room.
It's super useful, isn't it, as a spell?
Yeah, super useful, and also like it was really cool in this case, but I can imagine it being really, really annoying if you're trying to like keep secret something that's behind, like in the upper floor. I did something, and I in the moment I remember thinking, is this fair? Is this a good idea? So when they arrived, the animated armor was clanking around upstairs, going dong, 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 like that. I had in my head that the animated armor at night would settle into like it would be, you know, just a regular suit of armor or something. But I wanted it to be clanking around when they got there, so that it would be a big clue that something important is upstairs.
Yeah. It
lets you get in the key phrase like, oh, new security system recently had some high value items come. Yeah. So it lets you fit that in. So it was really important, but then I thought, I think it's going to be more fun if they get into the room and don't know it's there. So I slightly railroaded Prudence a little bit when she was like using clairvoyance, and I think I said it like you see something, you see like a big shadow like pass the clairvoyance camera or something.
Yeah.
What would have been more fair is to be like, you see a suit of armor kind of walking around.
I don't think it's railroading to not give that up, though. And just because they can see in the room doesn't mean that they do get to see everything. I thought it was a really nice moment of maintaining the tension. Because it's one thing to be like, there's something big in there and it's moving, but it doesn't seem to be moving right now, versus it's a suit of armor, you guys.
Yes, Yes, you're right.
You do still have, like, you know, the creative control, like... As much as you want to be fair, you still can keep things back to yourself because they're delicious secrets. Yeah. For the time being, you know.
And actually, like in terms of keeping delicious secrets back, I really enjoyed the way it played out when we got into the room, and I tried to mention the suit of armor in as offhand a way as possible. I was like, oh, there's stuff in the room, this and that, suit of armor, who cares, you know? But like, Jane seized on it immediately because she's familiar with pop culture and was like, suit of armor is never a suit of armor.
Yeah.
And that was really cool, because as soon as she started, because the thing that she did was like go up to it and like flip its visor up, and I thought like, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a cool and cinematic way for this fight to kick off.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really enjoyed about that being a violent combat thing and not stealth was that I knew that because they'd gone loud, the consequence was Symes was going to wake up, but he's only an old man. Like, it's not going to be a problem. So I sort of, you know, factored in, as soon as this fight ends, they'll finish, and then I'll say, you all turn around and he's been stood there the whole time and you didn't notice or something. So it was I just really enjoyed that combat because I already had queued up exactly what happens next. So like, I was doing the least amount of like plate spinning, I think, in there. Also, like, thank you so much for pointing out the grease fire situation, because when Merylwen was like, I conjure water, I was like, okay, well now the fire's going to go out. Then you like grease fire. I was like, brilliant, of course, I forgot. And then Merylwen's like, I turn into a bear. I was like,
okay,
I think you're still on fire.
Yes,
like, you know,
there are those.
Like,
well, there are always those moments where the team are like, I've changed my state of being. I go, this effect should be cancelled. Nay? And it's like, no, you're still subject to the rules of... Like, there are some lovely times where you can say, no. Common sense dictates this, you know. Yeah. And I love those moments.
Yeah. I picture the T-1000 going into the lava, you know, where it's like panically changing through all of its forms. But it's like, it's still it's dying, it's in the lava.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I also enjoyed that moment because I felt like Prudence and Merylwen were panicking, and the reason Ellen was saying, like, I turn into a bear is because she was alarmed that she was in a grease fire. I was looking at the, you know, how much HP I was taking off and stuff, and it wasn't really making a dent in their actual health pool. But that's ideal because it means I have to do less maths, but they feel like they might die.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's the perfect.
Oh, it's a joy. I love that kind of stuff.
I also got to bend the ranged spell rule, which I could just see. I read in the comments afterwards. I could see that was a sort of moment that everyone enjoyed. So
yeah,
really,
big time.
Yeah,
because it's like, you know, it's putting narrative and it's putting, you know, the story before the prescripted rules that are written in a book, you know. Because why when a warlock is putting their hands over the thing, it's like the source of my eldritch blasts are now here. Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, you're more likely to miss, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's I can kind of understand that rule, and I'm pretty sure it applies to spells as well as to like crossbows and bows and arrows. Because like the idea that like if you're trying to sort of get off a shot with a bow, but someone's like right up in your grill, then so it sort of make. I do understand it, but yeah, like common sense. If something's on the floor and you're just putting your hand on top of it, then that thing should get cooked.
I think because it was prone, it was definitely one of those sort of edge cases that it made more sense to do it in the way you did. Like I thought that was super satisfying. But yeah, I think you're right. Those rules are largely for just like when you're fighting in a corridor and you're trying to bring a rifle to bear, or you're trying to swing your arm around. It's easier for them to try and stop you, but it was prone, and prudence was like that. Yep. So I think
I loved how that whole situation panned out. I was really pleased that that felt like a really just nice example of having all of these little bits kind of mapped out in my head, but not really knowing how they were going to interact with each other. What else? I liked the cat. I liked that the cat did get involved in the end. Had like no plot important stuff to do. Yeah. But because also like Merrill was like, I'm gonna go talk to the cat. I was like, brilliant, because I decided in my head that the cat doesn't know anything. But like, it's fun to talk to the cat.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And kind of just again give another read on what Symes at that point was like as a character. For me, the most electrifying bit of all of that were the two clear indicators you gave that he didn't care what happened to his shop after a couple of days' time, because he was clearly planning to move the watch on. Like when I was like, that's going to come down very soon, talking about the ceiling, and he was like, a few days? Don't worry about it. It was like, what? What? Yeah. And I actually, even though I knew obviously he'd nicked something and he was trying to fence it, I found that so engaging. It was like, we've got to do something about this fast, because he's moving on the object. You know, we're going to lose control of this situation.
That's cool.
And it was like, and he's planning. This is his ticket out of here. This thing is really important.
He's going to be sitting on a beach earning 20%.
Yeah, and instead he got kicked to death by a pirate.
I rolled a d20. I think it was a 4. When Corazon kicked him.
Yep.
I mean, there should have been like an attack and a damage. But no, I just thought like he's died.
Yep. It was great fun. Yeah, like because it was kind of that moment where even Andy was like, he died. It's like he died.
Yeah, he died. You kicked an old man and you're a strong pirate. He died.
He's dead now.
He's dead.
And it's like oh, like what have I done? I loved it.
That was good. I enjoyed that as well, because like it meant nothing to me to kill him, like not in a cat, but like in terms of the story, his bit was done. Yeah, like it's neater if he's killed, because then no one can ask him any difficult questions or bring him along on the adventure or something. Yeah. So I thought it was interesting how, as the GM, I was maybe the least invested in who's alive and who's not. If that makes sense.
His death was still useful to you, because it closed off a story element quite neatly and meant that they only had one real choice, and that was to go talk to Shoelacy. Yeah. But also, I genuinely feel, like I very passionately believe, that it is a good thing to remind players how fragile life can be, and also to give them a read on how cheaply they regard human lives. Because like there was a really sobering moment for me when I was playing in a campaign and we just killed somebody in order to get through a door. Yeah. And we probably could have gone around another way, but it was like, no, I'll do it. And it was my character actually really casually executed somebody. Yeah. And then they came in and the guy was like, you value lives so cheaply. And he kind of told us off, even though he was a literal demon. Right. And I was like,
that's not good.
It's like, we do value lives very cheaply. Yeah. And so just reminding them that, while obviously this world is inert, and like bits of this world are inert until they interact with them. Yeah. In the belief they have in that world, those lives still matter. You know, it's like, you may never see that NPC again, but if they're dead, like, what a waste of life for you.
Yeah, that's permanent and final.
Yeah, just because you wanted to kick someone.
Yeah, also, like, on a less meaningful level, when you have the Google Doc in front, and I have like the monster stat blocks kind of up on screen, and I know that there's like a stat block for I think it's called Commoner or something, or something in the D&D rules, and I was like, okay, all human characters, Shoelacy, Erasmus, basically anyone who's not a monster or a player is a commoner, and they have like basically no health and can't do anything, and can't but so I was kind of adhering to the rules, you know. It's like, but I think when you are playing, you sort of have this idea that you are in this world and you are one of, because someone couldn't like kick Dob and he dies.
No.
Because he's a character. He's a half-orc bard. He has stats and powers and resistances and stuff. But like almost everyone you meet in D&D doesn't have those.
No.
And they die if you hurt them bad.
It's referred to as story armor.
Story armor, yes. I'll do it. Speaking of story armor, absolutely, statistically, Shoelacy should have been killed many times over by the moonbeam attack.
Yeah.
But obviously for story reasons, I stole that from you because I remember we did a campaign where you said to Egbert, "You've reduced all of his hit points. Do you want to kill him?" Which I thought was a really elegant way of, because generally I think in that situation people say no.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you're even asking suggests it's a bad idea to kill this person. So I was pretty confident that Ellen would say no, keep him alive, which was fine because I wanted him to. Yeah. If she'd have said kill him, I would have had to think on the fly of a way for them to figure out how to do unbaby Prudence. But I wasn't worried about it. I knew Ellen would say,
let's
keep him
leave him
alive.
be.
Especially because, and I felt like I was able to change the maths on her decision by describing the moonbeam as being so horrifyingly painful. So I really went over. The reason I went overboard with the like visceral description, apart from the fact that I'm desensitized completely to violence.
Thanks, video games.
Thanks, video games. And it means nothing to me. But apart from, I feel nothing. But apart from that fact, I knew that if I make this sound really, really painful and really, really make it clear that he's suffered and is suffering, then I think Ellen won't feel like she needs to.
Yeah. I think that's a great read on Merylwen's temperament, because she's not afraid of killing, but she won't do it if she thinks it's necessary, and particularly if she thinks it's cruel. I mean, like, I was I think it's fair to say that, like, as Hengist, I had in terms of the continuing campaign of the Oxventures, I had very little stake in it. Because, like, I, Johnny, knew that I was not going to be playing this character next time, blah, 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 and the quest was done. But you had described his pain in such a visceral way. I was like, I've got to heal this guy. I'm going to use my really most potent healing tool. It's because I just didn't want to listen to him and be like, kill me anymore. I was like, no, let's heal him up. And then
I thought that was really nice, though. I liked that.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed doing it, but oof. It's because I was feeling it.
It meant it was an easy sort of out for me to be like, okay, now we can talk. And he says, press that, wind that.
Yeah. And then Corazon kicked him to death anyway.
Yeah. Again, I rolled a D20 for that and just went with it because again, he's done. He's out the story as far as I'm concerned. So he's totally expendable.
It was just a great callback.
Yeah.
Callbacks make people feel clever.
I felt very, very, in terms of like the baby stuff, I thought it worked. Okay, only regret, we never did a diaper check. But, that's fine. I remember looking at the clock when we were sort of opening the safe, like the real world clock, and thinking, oh boy, we're leaving it pretty late to baby. I wish baby could have come in sooner. But in the end, we ended up running for 3 hours, so it kind of happened roughly in the middle, and so it was kind of fine. I think that I was very happy that it was Prudence.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah.
I rolled that dice honestly, for the like who was it, but possibly I would have lied if it had been someone else. Prudence just felt like a really good fit.
Yeah, when you were doing it, I was like, privately, I was like, I really hope. I hope it doesn't come up on me, because there's no previous knowledge of Hengist that would make it funny.
Yeah.
Just be like, oh, the dwarf we just met is now a young dwarf.
Yeah.
And I was pretty certain if it landed on me, you'd fudge it.
Yeah, I certainly would have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was relieved that I didn't have to think about fudging it.
Yeah.
It did roll on Prudence.
What a gift.
And I was the bit with the like twin Eldritch Blast fire hose thing. I felt really good about that and really relieved, because I thought when it happened and everyone was laughing, I thought like, we've done it. There's like something memorable, something like the baby thing has had a really memorable consequence.
Yeah.
Like this thing could only have happened if Prudence was a baby. And yeah, it's like at that point I was like, good, the baby thing's paid off. I don't need to worry anymore about putting a baby into like extreme situations.
Yeah, it was very funny. The way you described it was so good. It's like, imagine a baby's got hold of a fire hose, but that actually they've got two. It's a powerful visual. God, I thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
And like, so talking about the time thing, because obviously we ran to 3 hours.
Yes.
The funny thing is, and I truly believe this, even though we ran to 3 hours, you actually weren't bad on your timings for running it for a 2-hour session.
Okay.
That sounds weird, but let me sort of walk it back and talk to you about it. Like, because obviously I was keeping an eye on the time because I was curious as to how it was going. And, I think everyone sort of checks in just to know how far through the session we are.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were going into the shop, I was like, this is actually bang on. I thought to myself, if we're out of that shop with the watch by past, we'll be sorted, because we'll have, we'll have Babby, and we'll have like enough time for the heel turn, then the fight, then we'll be sorted. As it was, I think we got out of there either 12 to 15 minutes later, and then suddenly getting all that wrapped up in 15 minutes was quite a squeeze. So I was like, okay, this is going to be difficult, and I was worried that you were going to run up against the same scenario I did when I was like, we've got 5 minutes left, we've just started the boss encounter, let's hash this out, like let's get this going. So I'm really glad actually that once you got to the museum, I think it was a conscious choice you made to just be like, well, if we're overrunning, let's do it right.
Yeah, it was. I thought like someone would have given me a pretty obvious like cue by now if it was well, maybe we find out what happens next time or something.
Yeah,
they're a captive audience. Also, everyone seemed to be like invested in enjoying themselves.
Oh yeah, big time. And it was, what, it was lovely to give it the time.
Yeah.
It deserves to play out fully, because we got the good baby stuff, and we got intrigue in the fight. Even with like the relationship between the two mummies, which I loved. I thought that was great.
You know what? That came from a last-minute decision that one of the mummies should have half HP to sort of maybe make the fight go a bit quicker or be a bit less difficult. In the hope that it would wrap up, no pun intended, a bit sooner. But like, I had like a rich sort of headcanon for that little queen mummy.
It came across, because the other one was like 10 foot tall, right?
Oh yeah.
That was scary, genuinely. I was like, that is a horrible image. That it's cool. Like a big, like, rangy one that's kind of stomping around. Yeah. Like, in Bloodborne, the dudes that wear the hats. Like the flat hats.
Oh, yeah, I'm so with you. Yeah.
It actually kind of got under my skin a bit, which was quite impressive.
Oh, cool. I in the end, the fight was ended by rule of cool, because I was keeping track of their health, but and everyone's health, but there came a point in the fight where Prudence unwrapped one with, with baby maypoling, baby swing ball, And then Corazon had the bracers, and I was like, that's that's it for the mummies. I didn't fudge any rolls for the mummies as I remember it. I was a bit disappointed that nobody got mummy rot, which we were talking about before, which is like a sort of, scary curse. Also, nobody got frightened. The check to get frightened is actually pretty easy to beat. And I was like, playing it straight, I didn't sort of fudge that so that anyone was frightened. But also on the other hand, being frightened is kind of, it's like, it sounds pretty cool and is awesome, but also it would have made combat basically one round longer, because like you can't there's not very much you can do while you are frightened.
Sure.
The mummies, there was like, Corazon got hit.
He passed his Constitution saving throw, didn't he?
Yeah, so he did. Yeah. He actually was supposed to take twice as much damage. I was looking at the stats and I was thinking, like, no one's hurt these mummies yet. I think I'm going to make this mummy hit this particular attack a little softer, because otherwise, with Prudence being a baby, we could potentially be in a bad way. I'd forgotten about Uncanny Dodge. If I hadn't, I would have said you take 10. It's supposed to be 10 points bludgeoning, I think, and 10 points necrotic. Yeah. Which I guess would have been, halved and halved. So, as a sort of mental note that, like, Corazon is more or less unkillable.
Yeah.
So try and kill him real hard.
He's just so roguey. So roguey.
But that was, but like, also what Andy was doing was trying to get the braces, which was a really fun, like, I really like when people use their combat turns to do something that's not using a spell or an attack. Yeah. Because it's, you have to sort of think up how that works on the fly, and it's kind of fun, and it's normally something cool is going to happen because of it. And everyone was like firing on all cylinders in that fight. Like, Andy was, going after these braces. Merylwen was like solely focused on Shoelacy and the.
I thought that was lovely, actually. Shoelacy. And it felt like we really had cool roles as a team.
Yeah.
I initially, when I was using Turn the Undead, I just wanted to buy Merylwen some time. I completely forgot that I would be herding both mummies straight toward Corazon with the braces. Yeah. So then that felt super good. It felt like, playing like not Whack-A-Mole, it's Splatter Rat, the disappointing carnival game.
Yes, where you have to wait for the genie.
You have to wait for it then get it, and no one gets it.
Yeah. But Corazon
absolutely did. And it was a great rule of cool moment to end the fight as well. Because I think, again, the mummies had sort of served their purpose. Yeah. He'd given everyone a fight. They'd made, an already fraught situation more complicated. Like, I think it's fair to say we were quite worried about the Watch. But then, the best thing you could have done with them, rather than whittling away the numbers until you were like, and they have fallen over, would just be to have them disintegrate in a pile of being punched. Yeah. It was lovely. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and I think just having one unwound as well, like, in my mind, I think, I can't remember what I said. I think it was like, we'll take its armor class down to like basically nothing. Or something. But in my mind, I was like, this mummy's probably done now. Probably maybe whatever hits it next is gonna kill it. One thing that I thought during that combat encounter that was really interesting was sometimes when I play D&D, I have a hard time keeping straight the geography of the scene in my head, like where everybody is. And that's something that I was nervous about with GMing, because obviously it's quite important that you can remember so that it is fairly consistent. It was like so clear in my head, like where everyone was. I didn't even have to concentrate very hard on it. I think it's the fact that you're not thinking about just you and like what you're doing, and sometimes when we're playing and I'm being Dob, I'm so focused on trying to think of something cool to do when my turn comes around. Sometimes I'm like, at the bit where Mike is saying like, okay, I do this or something, I pay attention to what he's doing, but not necessarily the kind of details of where he's moving around to and stuff. So we talked about drawing diagrams and stuff like that, and you said I don't normally bother, and I was like, well, I had a pen and paper ready, but I didn't need it at all. I didn't. That was one thing that I didn't struggle with too much.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's
because sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's because the monsters you direct are quite straightforward. It's like, well, they're going to move and they're going to attack somebody. So all you have to focus on is where they really are.
Yeah.
And, you know, when that becomes your sole focus and keeping that picture clear in your head, it's amazing how clear it becomes.
The and there were some nice little touches. So, for example, because I had this really clear picture of when Prudence does the swing ball thing, and like skids along the floor on her bum, like up to the wall. It meant that I obviously didn't think about this at the time, but it meant that in my head I knew she was behind everyone, so that everyone could dramatically turn around and see that Prudence was there and was no longer a baby.
Of course.
So there was some. I was pleased at how actually it got me a few shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
Like just having that clear picture of where everything was. It was cool. I'm trying to think about. I think that basically takes us to the end.
Yeah.
There were some definite wins in there, and there was definitely some points where I was like, oh, this is going through a bit of a tight one here. I felt that end conversation with like in character as Shoelacy definitely felt like the kind of. I don't think it was bad. I think the whole thing went really well actually, and I was delighted. But that was the point where I was feeling like I'm not sure exactly. Like I couldn't think of an elegant way of turning this to my own. And you know, since then I've thought of like, what's that? The French phrase.
L'esprit d'escalier.
Yeah. Since then I've thought of like of course this should have happened and this, you know, like that. But I don't have any misgivings or regrets about the session. I was really, really pleased with how it went.
Good, yeah, you should be. People kept joking me like I look like a proud dad, but I was having so much fun just watching you just sail over hurdles. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I think like if there's one thing that like, obviously, you know, we said that the goal was to get you know, GMing a game, but actually I think the real goal was to just like get your instincts in the right place and sort of strip away the stuff that can be a distraction and just let you focus on the bare bolts of things and really just go at it. And I thought your instincts were amazing. Like you just like you had it and it was great and it was good and I want to see more of it. So
thank you. Well, that is very complimentary. As I was saying before, those like instincts were only able to sort of be firing at all because they were kind of propped up by the pillar of like structuring the thing, just having like and feeling confident that I had structured it enough, and feeling confident that I did not need to structure it more, even though I spent a week beforehand thinking I've only got like 200 words for this like thing. Yeah. But I didn't need it. In fact, like half of my notes didn't get used. Sparse though they were, and the other thing was just like the rules, memorizing the rules, like just not worrying about. Or feeling like I could look stuff up. D&D Beyond is pretty useful for that.
It is, yeah.
There were lots of things on D&D Beyond. You look it up and it's just like just directs you somewhere else, but you can't find where that is or something. So like so there are lots of. I feel like Wizards of the Coast write down every single rule somewhere, but never more than once. And like so you end up kind of bouncing from.
It's because it's a quest for knowledge.
Yeah, that's true. The real quest
was the reference we had to use along the way.
Real quest is trying to figure out what it means when something is prone, and what it can do. So that was cool. So like spell save DC remains as kind of getting that you were saying like you just can't keep the rules for grapple in your head. But like for me, it's like I just can't keep how spell save difficulty checks work. But it was fine.
Well, it'll go in someday. I think I remember how grapple works these days. I think.
Do you want me to test you? Hang on, I'm gonna check. Tell me what it is.
It is either a strength athletics or dex acrobatics check, depending on how the target is being grappled, versus I want to say it's their strength athletics, or is it dex acrobatics? I know you
It
get the
is-
choice when you're grappling.
Yes,
Is
Yes.
it Dex acrobatics to dodge?
it is. So if you are grappling something, it's a strength athletics check contested by the target's strength athletics or dexterity, and the target chooses the ability.
I got it the wrong way around.
But
And I know it's a
but
strength.
like-
Yeah, and you got to pass
Yeah.
the check to get out of it.
yeah.
Damn.
Just to be very clear to the viewer, I didn't have that on hand. I looked it up just now. I'm reading it from the website.
We've all got those little spots in our heads where
Yeah.
things fall away.
I guess that's so that because the target can choose whether it should be strength or dexterity. I guess it's a way of giving the thing that's being grappled a small edge.
Yeah, are you going to duck their
Yeah.
arm or are you going to shove them? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. One of these days, I'll get it right. Damn it.
But it's like, why? And then like if you want to get into like I'm one of the things that actually just being part of the Oxventure for years with you, Johnny, it's like it's meant that when I read this stuff, I start reading a paragraph and I think, no, we'll never need this, and about a third of the paragraphs that I read, I'm like, no, pass. Like I will never ever need to know that, like things about like carry weight, money, how much money you have. I know that obviously there's a running thing where like Dob doesn't care about money, but like as long as you're not asking for something ridiculous, it's like buying arrows between like Merylwen is never going to run out of arrows. I mean, for goodness sake,
No.
I'm not going to make her buy and track her arrows.
Exactly.
Nobody should. That's bonkers.
Yeah.
And like stuff like that. Oh, like ingredients for doing spells.
It's my most hated thing. That and carry weight. It's
There's,
just...
I mentioned that like I'm running a game for some friends now, and
Mhm.
and actually this is something else I wanted to pay you a compliment for. These friends are also people who've not played D&D before, which I hadn't before we started, and the way that you helped me create my character was so useful because you did all of the maths and all of the rolling, and you basically just gave me a little questionnaire that was super straightforward, and I totally borrowed that again. So if anyone out there is thinking that they want to try and get their friends into D&D, like don't ask them to look up how you make a character. Just ask them, what class do you want to be, what race do you want to play, and then you decide for them where all of the stats
the numbers go.
Yeah, because it's obvious, like also the book tells you, like, are you creating a druid? You should probably put your points in
This, and this. Yeah.
blah 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 blah.
Oh, well, I'm glad it came in handy.
Yeah, it came in really handy, and actually, it meant that I could sort of help people create a character, and all they had to do was think about fun stuff like backstory and, but and there was loads of stuff I could strip out as well. But that was all because I've seen you strip stuff out of the rules, and it's really empowering.
Good.
Like the book says, this character has it's a pouch. It's like, what's it called? An arcane pouch or some kind of pouch. A druidic focus. That's it. It's something
yeah.
like that. It's like, yeah, and I'm like, no.
No, they're just magic. It's fine.
It's magic. They have like a little bag full of petals. I like that that's there. Obviously, if you want to like hardcore role play it, I can see how it could be fun to really, really follow the rules, like like playing a video game with like the survival mode turned on. Or something.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a great example. I feel like they're optional extras. They're not things that have to be brought in order to be fun. And I think that's not obvious to new players, really.
No, the book presents all of this stuff as completely equal. It's
Yeah.
like, this is how a grapple works. This is what a druidic focus is.
Yeah.
And this is how you roll your attack. And it presents all of those as equally important. But they're not. So I would have been completely at sea trying to GM if I hadn't been a player under your guide. Like, quite aside from the lessons you gave me, but like just seeing the way you GM is like, I'm absolutely an acolyte of the school of Chiodini.
Amazing. We've got one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's to be honest more compliments than I think I can handle in one day.
boy.
So we'll sort of wrap this up, I think. But
Okay.
It's been a bloody pleasure talking about GMing with you and then watching you absolutely smash it.
Shucks.
I sincerely
you
hope
again.
this isn't the last time A, we get to play together, and B, people on the internet can watch your exploits, because you're really good at it. It's a joy to watch. So there.
I hope that is the case also.
Tremendous. Well, yeah, it's been lovely sort of doing this little mini-series, I guess you'd call it, on sort of your journey through the Johnny Chiodini GMing Academy, patent pending. But yeah, if anyone didn't already know, you can catch Luke on Outside Xtra, which is youtube.com// Outside Xtra.
No, it is //
Oh, it is //
Yeah, you have to write out the whole word.
And you can obviously find me on youtube.com / Dicebreaker, the channel you're already watching. We will see you again, I am entirely sure, but thank you again, Luke, for joining me and for being bloody excellent.
Back at you.
All right. We will see you very soon. Bye.